people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Yet another interesting battle of the unbeatens that caught my eye, set to go down on the undercard of Serrano versus Cruz early next month. Sky Nicholson versus Tania Alvarez. The Aussie versus the Spaniard. Set to go down in the women's featherweight division. Featherweight, that's 126 pounds. That's where Amanda Serrano and Erica Cruz campaign as champions. Beyond that fight, if Amanda wins the way I think she's going to win, she's going to have a lot of targets on her back. There's a proliferation of talent in the women's featherweight division. Lest we forget, that's where unbeaten up-and-comer Sophia Leash campaigns. Karis Ardingstall, Olympian Karis Ardingstall, who beat Sky Nicholson in the amateurs. That's where Sky campaigns. That's where Tania campaigns. A glimpse into the future. That's where one of my personal favorites campaigns, Raven Chapman. The featherweight bout between Sky Nicholson and Tania Alvarez is set to go down in the featherweight division for what is the WBC Silver Featherweight title, the vacant title. This fight is a step in the direction of the full title that Amanda is currently in possession of, billed as a 10-rounder. Discrepancy in the fighters' ages. Sky Nicholson is approximately 6 years older than young Tania Alvarez. Sky is 27, whereas Tania is 21. Tania may have more professional fights than Sky Nicholson, but she's not as maturated a fighter to the eye. Not all unbeaten up-and-comers were created equal. Sky Nicholson comes from a very distinguished amateur background, and even though they're in similar places in their careers as pros, they are very different fighters. Sky Nicholson sports a professional record of 5 wins, no losses, and no draws with no recorded knockouts. Not yet. Sky Nicholson strikes me as a fighter that is still more or less transitioning from an amateur style to a pro style, and there's no shame in that. She's only spent 1 year in the pros so far. It was a busy year, but better still, it was just 1 year. It's only been 1 year. She's got plenty of time. Though I will say, so far, so good. Sky Nicholson, the pure boxer, Sky Nicholson, the southpaw, the mobile one, presents a frustrating challenge, a very frustrating, pesky style for the woman opposite the ring of her, irrespective of who the woman is. Early next month, it's going to be Tania Alvarez, who sports a professional record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. Tania, to the eye, is more brawler than boxer, and she's still very raw. That's why I say that not all unbeaten up-and-comers are created equal. Sky Nicholson, in spite of having less pro bouts than Tania Alvarez, she has more amateur experience overall, and that shines through in her performances. This is a fighter that is so obviously capable and knows what she's doing in the ring, whereas Tania, she's still very much rough around the edges, and you can see that there are things that still need working on. So credit to her for garnering a lot of professional experience last year. She fought approximately 5 times last year, having debuted as a professional in 2021, 2 fights in 2021, 5 fights in 2022. She has kept a very similar schedule of activity to Sky Nicholson, who debuted last year but was just as busy. Sky fought 5 times last year. I expect young Sky Nicholson to keep a similar schedule of activity this year, though she does want to hit the ground running. She's targeting alphabet titles. She wants to see herself become a full-fledged champion. She's set to kick off this year with the fight against Tania Alvarez, unbeaten up-and-comer from Spain, Tania Alvarez, who to the eye seems a bit slower than Sky Nicholson, bit more flat-footed too, more aggressive. Where Sky is a long-distance, long-range outside fighter, Tania is more of a mid-range fighter. Her best punches are her bent arm punches, her hooks, her body shots. For the most part, she's a close quarters fighter. There does seem to be a bit of mustard on those shots. There does appear to be a bit of power in Tania Alvarez's punches, though I'd wager that opposite the ring, Sky Nicholson, she's going to struggle to get within striking distance of Sky, as Sky is very light on her feet. She's very nimble, very agile, and she can work on the outside quite comfortably. Tania Alvarez has all the makings of what could become a pressure fighter or a boxer puncher over time. This early in a fighter's career, it really is too soon to tell what they will develop into, though I reiterate, to the eye, she is a close quarters fighter, and she does seem to be a spiteful one. She does like to pour it on. She does like to throw punches in bunches, though opposite the ring, a moving target like a Sky Nicholson, whose best punches are her straight punches and has good dimensions for the weight. She's long and loose and limber. Those long levers, Sky can work from the outside opposite the ring a fighter like Tania Alvarez quite comfortably, and I think that's what she's going to do. Till Tania Alvarez adds more skills to her repertoire. She's a bit slow on her feet. She's a plotter. Not the fastest feet, not the fastest hands. There doesn't appear to be much snap on her punches, though there does appear to be some power if she can get within striking distance. I think Sky's gonna jab this girl's head off. That's what I think she's gonna do. I think she's gonna pivot and turn Tania Alvarez, walk her into check hooks, walk her into punches, and Tania Alvarez won't have the hand speed or foot speed to keep up with Sky. Sky not being that big a puncher, at least not yet. I'm not anticipating that this fight ends in a knockout. I think it goes the full 10 rounds. But Sky Nicholson on points is the logical pick. It's the logical choice. I anticipate that Sky will advance to a professional record of 6 wins and no losses early next month. In men's super lightweight news, super lightweight WBC champion Regis Prograis doesn't think highly of Ryan Garcia. Ryan would be a cakewalk. Don't got that dog. Not painting his nails and doing TikTok dances, he doesn't. What do you want me to say? Is that the year mark of a tough guy? Painting your nails, doing TikTok videos, lip-syncing songs? Give me a break. I ruin. A lot of people said Prograis during an interview with BoxingScene.com. I really do. I fight to beat you up. I feel like Ryan would be a cakewalk. He ain't gonna be like nothing at all. I don't even have to train for him. Prograis ultimately is still enjoying the euphoric feeling that is associated with winning a world title after having his previous reign truncated at the hands of Tosh Jailer in 2019. Prograis worked his way back to the top of the pugilistic mountain. Now, with his shoulders laced with a gold following his victory over Jose Zepeda, the brash Louisiana native is welcoming all comers. Ryan Garcia won't be one among them. Just the other day, he was rationalizing excuses and reasons as to why he shouldn't fight a guy like Regis. We talked about it here on the channel, how he was talking up the likes of Garcia-Davis and talking down the likes of Regis Prograis. And these guys always tell on themselves when they do this, because fighting Gervonta and fighting Regis is not an either-or situation for someone as young as Ryan Garcia, who hasn't even fought for a world title yet. It really isn't either you fight Gervonta or you fight Regis. You can fight them both. You're young enough. You have enough time, but you're making it seem that way because you don't want no parts of this guy. He knows it, I know it, and you know it. Although he initially revealed that he wouldn't spend a single second training for Garcia, Prograis, while slyly smirking, admitted that he was being facetious, but only slightly. I'll train, but it won't be like how I really train. I think Ryan's a pretty boy. I don't think he's got that dog in him like that. He doesn't. In any event, despite Prograis' disparaging words, Garcia will be given the opportunity to prove his worth, with all signs pointing to a showdown taking place against Garcia-Davis. At some point in mid-April, Prograis acknowledges that he'll be an interested observer. But while it appears that though Davis and Garcia will eventually lace up their gloves and settle their differences in the ring, Prograis seriously doubts that Garcia will ever find his pen and step up to negotiating. Ryan isn't going to fight this guy. He's not going to fight Regis Prograis. Regis Prograis is a grown man and one of the more destructive punchers in the entire super lightweight division. Ryan and Gervonta, those kids are too JV for a fighter like this, and they know it. They rely on their popularity, their marquee value, and hide behind it. Having a bunch of Instagram followers doesn't make you a better fighter. Being popular, which is what Ryan Garcia is. He is a popular young fighter. He certainly gets talked about more than Regis Prograis, but that has little to no bearing over his ability to fight and his chances opposite the ring of Regis Prograis. Make no mistake, Regis puts that kid in the hospital. Not but 3 days ago here on the channel, channel, we talked about Ryan Garcia's postulations, saying by eye test, wouldn't you consider Tank the most talented and dangerous fight? It's common sense my victory over Tank would be better than if I won a fight with Regis Prograis for all the quote-unquote belts. It's pretty clear if you look for it. The gaslighting is, yeah, I know. I'm not telling you that Gervonta-Davis isn't a dangerous fight for Ryan Garcia. I'm telling you that a Regis Prograis fight is an even more dangerous fight for Ryan Garcia. He's a dangerous fight for Gervonta, too. That's what I'm telling you. These two kids are peas in a pod, is what they are. They often seek refuge in their popularity, their marquee value, in order to circumvent tough fights with tough fighters. And that's what Regis Prograis would be to either one of them. You'll talk up Gervonta, talk up your fight with him, say he's the most talented to the eye, but he's not the most talented on paper. And he's not the most proven overall. He's not the most proven fighter at lightweight, and he certainly isn't the most proven fighter at super lightweight, where he's only fought just once, against another guy who didn't prove anything. There's a reason for that. Now, does that mean that Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta-Davis is a bad fight? No, it's not a bad fight. It's a very intriguing fight. It actually is. And it's a big money fight as well, that if they can get it to the finish line, I'm sure they'll all make very good money, irrespective of who wins. They'll make no mistake. The danger is at least twofold opposite the ring. A Regis Prograis tenfold, depending on who you ask. Ryan Garcia is a guy who's in his mid-20s, for God's sake, and he's treating a Regis Prograis fight and a Gervonta-Davis fight as if it's an either-or situation. You have enough time to fight them both, but you want to fight one of them more than the other, because the other... Oh, you'll make more money with Gervonta than you would with Regis. You will. But when the same fighter who finds the time to fight the likes of a Francisco Fonseca, an Emmanuel Tagoe, a Javier Fortuna, when you find the time to fight lesser fighters than Regis Prograis is, you can't badmouth Regis Prograis. You can't turn around and do that when you regularly fight lesser fighters than he is. You got time for Francisco Fonseca, time for Luke Campbell, time for Javier Fortuna, time for Emmanuel Tagoe, but when Regis is brought up, and his belt, he starts up with the belts don't matter stuff. Belts don't matter. But the guys you're fighting do? That's when the gaslighting becomes obvious, when the logic you're employing collapses in on itself. If you have time for the fighters that you've been fighting, you should have time for a Regis Prograis, because he's a better fighter than those guys are. And you're not a lightweight anymore. You're up there at super lightweight now. That's 140 pounds. That's his stomping grounds, not yours. Deep waters at 140 pounds with fighters like Subriel Matias, Regis Prograis, Jose Zepeda, Jose Ramirez. Shark-infested waters at 140 pounds. Ryan Garcia himself is hoping that Tank knocks out Hector Luis Garcia, saying it'll make our fight even more interesting. It won't reflect well on the knockout merchant that is Gervonta-Davis if he can't knock out Hector Garcia. Or worse, if he loses. I mean, where would that leave the Ryan Garcia fight? Ryan will arguably be Gervonta-Davis' biggest fan on January 7th when Tank takes on Hector Luis Garcia at the Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. on Showtime pay-per-view. Should Davis defeat Hector Luis Garcia 16-0 with 10 KOs, rival Ryan 23-0 with 19 KOs will be waiting for his crack soon after for a 136-pound catchweight showdown tentatively scheduled to take place April 15th. Hector Luis Garcia is just not on Tank's level, Garcia told Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated. I want Tank to knock him out cold. It will make our fight even more interesting. At minimum, it will allow the fight to stay the course. Hector comes from a pretty good amateur background, I think he's got something like 400 amateur fights. Signature wins over unbeaten Chris Colbert and then WBA super featherweight champion Roger Gutierrez. But Ryan doesn't feel that Hector is on Gervonta's level. Ryan, who says, I'm done fucking around. I'm ready to go right after Tank. It's not about the money for me. I'm just not interested in easy fights. I could have been fighting anybody and making a decent amount of money and win and keep all the hype going. But for me, it's really truly about greatness. I've worked so hard to get to this point. Fought for everything my whole life. I've promoted myself really well, and I've done everything I could to get to this point where I make a mega fight happen. Garcia also alluded to having to make compromises during the negotiating process in order for the fight to come into fruition. One of the major sticking points was whether or not Showtime, which has distributed Davis's bouts.
He said it's not about the money. That's rich.
Where there's a will, there's a way, said Garcia. I guess my will was that strong. Sometimes you just have to say yes. That's what it really is. Say yes to anything, and that's what I did. I said yes to everything, and I made sure that I wouldn't give them an excuse to not make the fight happen. This is what legends are made of. Everyone is going to be talking about that fight. I'm going to be disciplined. I expect to be on fire when we get in the ring. Basically, this is my dream. My dream is to be the biggest fighter in the world and to fight the best and put on great shows and inspire the world with truth. And I think this fight will give me that voice. That's what I aspire to do. So I think this fight will really give me that once I beat Tank.
Well, it would be a step in that direction. I mean, it would be a big fight, and it is a good fight. It's a fight that intrigues me as a consumer.
But maybe Ryan's overselling it a bit, and there's growing concerns as to whether or not the fight will actually happen. Eddie Hearn on Gervonta-Davis versus Ryan Garcia said it's 50-50 right now whether or not the fight will even happen.
Fights fall apart all the time.
With Ryan Garcia having so much riding on this fight, what would his alternatives be if he doesn't share the ring with Gervonta-Davis later on this year?
There are other fights out there, but those other fights haven't been built up as much by both sides as much as this one.
Both Team Garcia and Team Davis must view the other man as being more beatable than who else is out there. Thus, they've sought refuge with each other, viewing each other as the biggest bang for your buck fight they can have and the most winnable fight that satisfies that demand as well.
Nobody's shaking in their boots at either 135 or 140 pounds at the prospect of facing Ryan. In truth, very few fighters are shaking in their boots at that same prospect when it comes to Gervonta.
I hate to break the news to you guys, but while Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta-Davis is a big fight, an intriguing fight, an attractive and appealing fight,
Whoever wins that fight don't get crowned the best lightweight or the best super lightweight in the world. Are you kidding me?
just because the fight's a big money fight doesn't necessarily mean that the guy that wins that fight is the king of the hill. I mean, take Amir Khan versus Kell Brook, for example. That was a big money fight in the welterweight division, and that fight actually happened, and it did good at the box office, did good at the gate.
Oh, I know that both guys were over the hump. I know that both guys were over the hill and their best days were behind them. I get that, but based on marquee value,
It was still a very big fight, yet in spite of it being a very big fight, nobody thinks Kell Brook is the best welterweight in the world. Far from it. So when I look at Ryan and Gervonta and I see that they have a big money fight of their own that they may or may not have, yeah, it's a big money fight.
yeah, it is.
But whoever wins, they ain't number one at 135 pounds or number one at 140. So pump the brakes.
This fight, Davis versus Garcia, is it signed? I mean, these two guys, they're all over the place. I guess it's only 50-50 whether the fight will even happen going into this Saturday, said Eddie Hearn.
You have to wonder what Ryan's going to do if Hector pulls the upset. What are his alternatives?
Hell, if he doesn't, you still have to wonder as to whether or not this fight is going to happen.